Hey, it's Darren with Arbitrage Trade. I also have Daniel with Arbitrage Trade here. And we're going to discuss basically what everybody's been discussing, the media and everyone this past week. And the title of his blog this week is Trump 2024, What His Presidency Could Mean for U.S. and Global Markets. I think if you've been alive and you've looked at any type of media that has to do with business, you know that there has been an effect already on not only Bitcoin but also on stocks in general. It's like his just the fact that he's going to be taking over has caused a lot of things to happen, a lot of dominoes to go certain ways, and so that's why this deep dive is about the Trump effect. We'll just say the Trump effect. Um, Go ahead and give us a little intro of what you're going to talk about here, Daniel.
Yes, I mean, we have things like him replacing people, putting on new tariffs, potentially changing taxes. There's a million things that kind of go into this, Trump influence on the US and global markets. And, I think there's some things that are for sure bet, you know, and there are other things that are, we'll see kind of where it actually ends up landing, right? A lot of people are scared about it, but if we know, when Josh was talking in our After the Bell segment, I think he made a
Right?
really good point about Trump is that he says something kind of outrageous, right? Like, I want 100% tariffs on all Chinese
Yep.
goods,
Yep.
when really that's a negotiating tip to maybe get 15%. If that, right? Or it could just be to stop World War III and say, hey, don't take Taiwan or no one's going to be able to afford your stuff anymore.
Yeah, he threatens. That's kind of was that part of the Art of War? Didn't he say he liked that book? I don't remember, but
Well, so he
um,
he has a book that I've actually read called The Art of the Deal. And
Art of
say
the
what
Deal.
you
That's
want
it. Yes,
about
yes,
the man
yeah.
ethically or politically or whatever. I read, my dad bought me that book and I read it and I go, how
It,
he thinks of these deals and like comes up with them. Like there was something
yeah,
where he bought the air rights to a building to like build a building over another building. I was like, who does that?
I have
Like,
read about that. Yes.
I was like, what the heck?
Yeah,
So he is a master negotiator and dealsman.
he
If
is.
there's anything to applaud about him.
He is. I mean, he runs it like a business, and it's he's not necessarily a politician. I mean, he kind of was the outsider that came in and started running the government like a business. Um, But I think maybe this round, he might be a little more political just because of all the things that have happened to him. Basically, since he, walked down or what was it? He came down the elevator. Everybody talks about him coming down the elevator when he was first elected. So, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, let's get into that. One of the things is the Fed and the battle between Trump and the Fed. And it's funny because when at the last FOMC meeting and the questions afterward, um, Powell was asked, "Hey, what are you going to do basically if Trump tells you you need to go?" And Powell's response back was that he doesn't basically employ him and that he doesn't have to go until his contract is over, so to speak, and that's believe
Mhm.
2026. So,
Yep.
what's going to happen between now and then? Are there going to be fights? Is it going to be staged fights? And they're really on the same team. I mean, what do you think?
Well, so the interesting part about this is that if I remember correctly, Powell was actually appointed by Trump, right?
Yes, yes,
Um, and Trump has, said previously, I don't know if this statement has changed, that he would let Powell finish out his term. And I do think the interesting and I'll say concerning part is that Trump wants the presidency to have more influence on the Fed's decisions,
yeah,
which you know I I've thought through this scenario quite a bit, and I just don't see how there's a good outcome. And then, I recently learned that, the last time the president had great influence on Fed decisions, it was in the 70s with Nixon
yeah,
and caused the Nixon, inflation spike of the 70s that I believe had the gas lines and stuff, right? Which, that was a part of some other things geopolitically as well, but, pretty it's if history repeats itself or even rhymes, It's not a great thing we want to be a part of. And Trump being a businessman and having been in the real estate game definitely kind of understands interest rates, but I don't think I want his finger on the trigger. If anything, I
Well,
oddly enough probably trust him more with nuclear codes.
that's scary too. But no, the actual thing is it makes them almost into like a king. I mean, because if
Hmm.
you control that part, then you sure can control the people, in my opinion. And there definitely needs to be a separation of those two.
Hmm.
Even though technically, if everybody's being honest and those little closed doors and behind the scenes and not in the media, I think every single country, the leader is in cahoots, if you will, with their central bank. But yeah, in other words, I don't think it'd make much of a difference, but it's interesting to look at and to play with. So this leads to something he does have more control over for the time being, and that is who's basically doing the regulation at places like the SEC and the FTC. Um, and you have Queen Khan and
Yeah.
and, and Gary Gensler, and those are the SEC and FTC leaders. Again, I think a lot of this stuff, when you have it's good cop, bad cop, and they play a role, and I think it's virtue signaling, even with Trump and these people. But you're saying that less regulation is going to create even more of a boom because these companies like the one you used to work at and all of their buddies will be able to do M&A and IPOs without worry and less regulation. And I posted this on my personal just recently is less regulation means more corruption. So it definitely gives you more room. There's not as much of a bright light shining on you when you know that the regulation's not there to check up on you. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can't say I disagree, but we have seen the last, I'll say 3 years, maybe two and a half, that really IPOs and M&A have come to a standstill, right? Any company that tried to buy any other company, it pretty much didn't go through. Any merger has been blocked. We've seen a lot of suits to potentially break up companies like Google, which, I'm neither here nor there about. Like, I think a lot of the things I kind of targeted initially, I'm kind of like, I don't really care if Google's the default paid for engine on my iPhone. It's like, one, I know I can change it. Two, it's like, there's nothing better than Google. Anyway, um, but I do think, all of that blocking isn't good for, the country or business, right? You're an entrepreneur, you want to start a business. Well, if tech businesses, you kind of either IPO or you get bought. Otherwise, it's like you don't really have that exit. And if you don't have that exit, I think it stops a lot of people from starting a company. And if let's just look at China, for example. Once they silenced Jack Ma, if you look at the amount of startups that took place in China, it was going like this and then dropped drastically. Like all the, smart Chinese people are not starting their companies in China anymore. And I think, a lot of the FTC blocking and a lot of the things we'll say specifically for like crypto that Gary Gensler was against kind of inhibits that innovation that makes America moves markets, right? And I'm not saying there's not things that don't happen on the back end, which you're talking about, but I do hope that it is a shift in a direction to where you know do we need the crazy boom cycle of 2020 again? No, that was overkill, right? But do we need the 15% decline that we had this year with M&A? Like, I don't. That's not good either, right?
Yeah, I just think every time I think of IPOs, I think of corruption because I think of companies that are created simply just to make a lot of money, um, but not really anything of substance. And then it's kind of like when the dot com went crazy. It was a bunch of companies that were created that really weren't anything to do with the dot com, but they, just because they had dot com at the end of whatever it was they were doing, it raised a lot of money and then people got rich. So, and if you're going to throw in at the same time less regulation for when that's happening, oh man, it's going to be crazy. I think there
So
should be
so
more
okay, so
regulation.
are you going to buy or not buy the OpenAI IPO?
A lot of people will, and a lot of people will get the rug pull, and then only the institutions, the people with a lot of money, will make money off of that. And that's what I think. Yes. So no, I'm not. Even if I had money to, no,
So
I would
if you know how the institutions are going to make money, then why don't you just do what they do?
because they get in early. They always get in early. They get in where we can't. They get invited early and can put a lot of money in before us retail folks can even get in on it. So it's
Sure,
you know
but I mean, look at like the standard of anytime a tech company IPOs, it normally bottoms within the first 3 years and then rebounds and starts finding its true valuation.
yeah. I mean, if you
So if
want to
anything, those people who
wait
buy them
four
in the
years,
beginning
sure.
get their face ripped off.
Right, right, if they sell. But they do, that's what happens, and it is happened with a lot of them. I mean, and
I know. We
I
used to sell it to clients. I won't lie.
okay, good, thank you. The only reason I know this because I really followed the markets closely for a long time, and I would see it. Whenever there was an IPO, you could see, I mean, the MSNBC would just be like excuse me, CNBC would be just like oozing about, "Hey, this IPO, look at this IPO, yay, yay, yay," and they'd have segments, and they'd everybody be all happy, cheery, and then, "Oh, I think it's gonna open up at 100. No, I think it's gonna open up at 150," and it's just you could just tell that they had meat in the game. And it's just, the whole thing just makes me sick. M&A, I mean, it does need to happen, but I do agree with, you cannot have too powerful of a company controlling a certain industry. You've got to have competition, and to me, that's what the US is about, is having enough people around to keep prices where they need to be. They're already terrible, but if you went to only 1 or 2 players, it's gonna be even worse, especially if they
So
get
do you think
together.
Amazon not being able to, or if Amazon had bought iRobot, that'd be anti-competitive to the vacuum market?
That did
Because that's
happen, right?
something
I
that
mean,
keeps me
yeah.
up at night, Darren. That keeps me up at night.
Yeah, yeah, it
Or
depends on what we're
what was
talking
it
about
like?
here.
JetBlue merging with Spirit or whatever. I'm like, oh great, two shitty
Yeah,
airlines come together for one
right,
big
right.
shittier one. Like,
No, they you change it to Shinola, right? If you put 2 together like that?
yeah.
Alright, some people know that phrase. So let's move on to, so we hit the M&A and the IPOs, and I kept all my food down, and, now we move on to global markets bracing for the high tariffs and new trade policies. I mean, I don't even believe the GDP numbers anymore. I don't like the one that was released recently. I don't believe that. Um, so I don't even know what to believe on this. But the point here, you're saying
Tell
that
us what you do
Trump,
believe, Darren.
I don't. If it's released
Do
in
you
the media
believe in
now, I don't.
magic and a young girl's heart?
Not anymore because her dreams have been just killed, absolutely killed by those that are corrupt. Her dreams. She has no
Darren, I think you
magic
need
in
to
her
go
heart.
touch your grass this weekend.
I do. Say touch grass. Oh, he said grass, not the other
Or
thing.
the
All
other
right.
thing that you thought you heard.
Muchus gracias. All right. Let's move on to the tariffs. So Trump is talking about possibly 100% tariffs on China, and then or 6,200, and then a 10% levy on imports. Basically, we were talking about this earlier too, driving the dollar up, basically, and making things a little more fair, I guess, with these countries like China who sell things really expensive. I hear in the background short Timu, short Shein, because
Too bad they're
that's
not
the one.
public.
Yeah, those are the ones though that's right. They haven't gone public yet, have they? Shein hasn't
I
either.
mean, I don't believe so. I
Okay,
think the only one that I think TikTok is owned by ByteDance and they're public, but
I
I don't
feel
think
like
the other two
there's
are.
some connection. I don't know. I still have to look it
Maybe
up one.
Temu is has a holding
Yeah,
company.
but even if you just look at Alibaba and other, I know they are,
Oh,
of course.
Temu's PDD.
Yeah, exactly, Pinduoduo. I said it right because I hear him say that all the time. People will say Pinduo.
Shein though,
Uh,
I don't believe is
okay,
public.
gotcha, gotcha. I figured it was. So, what is it doing, by the way, PDD?
It
Surely
was
it's
down.
going down with the fact that these tariffs could be put there because then
Year to date, it is flat.
it's flat, but recently, like in the last
I mean,
couple of
it's
weeks,
3%.
nothing. Okay, interesting. He's got to change his timeline to look at the chart. Don't have to do that. That's fine. So we're looking at, let's see, you talked about Mexico and Germany. You know what? What I think, in my opinion, the first real economy that's really going to hit pavement, if you will, is Europe. And then everything's going to happen as a result from it. If China doesn't beat them to it, I think it could be Europe, especially going into this cold winter and what's happened with all of the energy that's there. So first part of next month or first part of next year, we're going to see a result of what happened with energy prices uh, because they have a natural uh, gas issue there, and
Mhm.
it's very expensive. I mean, extremely expensive, and once it gets really cold, it's only going to make it more expensive. So, and they're already hurting in a lot of ways. There's already a signs of recession, and actually some countries within Europe that have admitted recession, unlike ours. They've admitted that they actually have recession. It's only going to make everything worse. So, what's the whole Trump trade gonna do with that? I mean, what will his tariffs have to do with Europe? We already talked about China, but what about Europe?
Yeah, so I mean, with Europe, the theory is that it'll hurt their exports to America, which ultimately hurts their economy, right? Because they make Volkswagen, even though I believe they just closed down their last German plants.
Yeah, that was
But
historic,
you do
historic.
have uh, BMW, Mercedes, Audi, companies like that. Um, but on the flip side is that China said if, or I shouldn't say they said, the theory is that if they can't sell as much goods to the U.S., they'll just focus more on Europe. So it's kind of this like global jigsaw puzzle of where is everyone going to fit in. But to the
Exactly.
point I was saying earlier is that Trump wants these things, and I do think there are things like BYD, maybe that is a bit more like, hey, listen, you can't have a half price Tesla copy come in, right? Just like how like a Samsung isn't like half price of an Apple phone. It's it's still about the same price.
Yeah,
But
there's lots of
are
bells and
these
whistles on
60 to
BYD.
100% more kind of bargaining chips and like, hey, like, like I was saying before, like, let's lay off on this whole Taiwan thing, let's be a bit more competitive on this. And, maybe we'll just keep tariffs where they are, right? Maybe we'll come to a nice little deal that fits out for both of us. Like, you don't get to steal our AI chip technology anymore. And we'll let you have TikTok in the US, right? We'll let TikTok, you can keep owning it. We'll just let that slide.
Yeah, they're gonna keep, I mean, they're gonna make their own chip that's gonna be equivalent. There's just no way they're not. They knock off everything else. It's not like it's gonna, basically, I mean, it's not China just is gonna take over TSMC, and they're going to get their chips from there. Is that not what's gonna happen? I mean, is
I
don't
believe there's
see that?
limits on what TSMC can send to China as well. Kind of everyone's in cahoots against China as far as chips go. They're trying to be.
Yes, I think it'll all play out eventually. I think there's been backroom deals there too, in my opinion. Because, I mean,
Oh,
who's gonna
for
check
sure.
it? Who's gonna check it? And now we're gonna have less regulation. Wild, wild west.
I don't
Will
know. I
Smith
mean,
loves it.
Trump was pretty tough on China last time, so that might be the one part where there is more regulation.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, though. I mean, by mid-year next year, it'll be really interesting to see where we're sitting and what we're talking about then. So let's go ahead and get your part out of the way, the Bitcoin thing. Go ahead and talk about it real quick, and then we'll move on as quick as possible.
Yeah, so I mean, we don't need to harp on this too much more. I'm already dancing on Darren's
Yeah,
grave with the price of
you really
Bitcoin.
are. You are.
Um,
I hope you sip on my bananas.
next week, I'm only gonna have crypto topics in our after the bell agenda.
I
But
believe it. I
no, so I
believe it.
mean, you know, Trump, I'll say, had the first original stance on being pro crypto. A lot of people said Kamala is the same. I think she just copied him. I don't think there's any reason to believe that
Remember,
the
she
Democrats
wore these
were.
shoes. She wore those shoes called flip flops. So go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. She was big on doing that for about a month. Um,
Yes.
but I mean, Trump had been to the crypto rallies. JD Vance I don't know if you've seen the clips of him talking about crypto. He actually has some knowledge, right? It's not just like, yeah, we should have it where Trump kind of is. Like Trump kind of ran on it as a platform,
He is younger,
but JD, yeah, but I mean, JD Vance kind of
right?
worked in tech a little bit, and his whole thing is
Yeah.
like, yeah, tokens that have utility should be a thing, but he's like, if it's just like a meme coin, it shouldn't be. And like, I guess I kind of agree, right? If you look at stocks, stocks don't exist technically to trade there. It is at least some underlying value. And Trump really wants to, I forget, I don't know if I have the exact quote in here, but that he wants crypto to be, mined, minted, and produced all in America, right? If it's going to be the next big thing, and even potentially build a strategic reserve of Bitcoin that comes from um, seized operations. So I do think, between that, I don't think Trump will be as involved in it as someone like JD Vance will be, and firing Gary Gensler. I do think this will be a very pro crypto, environment. I am really interested to see though how things go with like USDT, because I don't know if they would qualify it as a utility, especially when it's anti-competitive against the dollar, right? So it's like I had a friend who was like, "Oh, I'm gonna wait for Bitcoin to hit this price, and then I'll put it back in like Tether or USDC Circle,
Mhm.
and then I'll just let it yield the 4.5% or whatever it is."
Right,
And I was like,
right.
"Yeah, just like only have an amount in there that you're okay with being bricked forever." I was like, that could be a riskier trade now than it was before.
Yep, yep. Uh, the last thing to wrap it up is basically how it affects your portfolio, and I think we've kind of talked about that through this whole thing,
Mhm,
because I mean, if your portfolio includes stocks, your stocks have everything to do with about what's going in the world, so I don't think we really need to. I mean, we could wrap it up with the last little thing here, but your basic comment was that it's you got to be able to be flexible on where your stance is, because that could change in a second. Especially, it'll be interesting to see what happens on day one with all the what are they called? Why? It's been too long of a day.
executive actions?
Executive orders. Yes, thank you. To see what happens there, and then the one offs from that or two offs from that on and what's in your portfolio could be affected greatly. 2026 is going to be a really crazy. I think the first 3 months, the first quarter of 2026 is gonna say a lot, as we get things set in motion. Right now, we're projecting where things are gonna go, but then it'll be where they're actually gonna go, and it'll depend your portfolio and your savings and your 401(k)s all rely on that, so, a lot going on
Mhm,
first quarter of 2026 for sure. Let's just hope we get
indeed.
there. That's
Yeah,
right.
right.
Nobody pushes any wrong buttons. Alright, anything last words there before we get out of here?
No, no, it'll be, we definitely have 4 years of entertainment ahead of us, that's for sure.
It really will. It'll be funny to see. It'll be funny to see places like X. I mean, it's already like becoming the number one platform now for where you people get their news. So now with Musk getting into the office, sort of as Doge, which we didn't even talk about, but the Department of Government Efficiency, which that is DOGE, which is crypto in itself as well. That's Elon Musk's crypto. It's gone up crazy for the last what month or so. It's gone up
Yep.
to that's our bet next week, isn't it? No, or was it? No, we talked about
No,
it.
we did
So
McDonald's.
look at it
Royce
after the
did the
bell.
analysis on
The
Doge.
analysis, yes, yes, on where it could go. But it's definitely, historic levels right now, just like everything else in the stock market, so all right, Daniel, thanks for the info. I think it's a lot of good stuff to prepare for now and next year, and, we will see you next week on Deep Dive with Daniel.
Have a good one, Darren.